그때도 쉽게 이긴 게 아니라 정말 어렵게 이겼기 때문에.
It is semi-finals time today. We get to see if the KOO Tigers or KT Rolster go on to face SK Telecom. Nagne hacking away at the Nexus. Grab onto prey mixes. Nagne still so low. He's got that shield. The Nexus, he gets it. KT ties it up. What a backdoor. What a game from KT.
그때 당시에 저희가 마지막 5경기까지 가서 블라인드 전까지 갔는데
KOO holding on by the thinnest of threads. Solar Flare goes down, they slow Kuro. Kuro taken out by Arrow, and that is it. It is over, and KT is going to the grand finals.
블라인드 전에서는 약간 가위가위보 싸움 같은 거죠. 롤드컵 같은 경우에는 블라인드가 없기 때문에 5경기까지 가도 좀 이길 수 있지 않을까 생각해요.
이번에도 쉽지는 않다고 생각하지만 그때처럼 이길 수 있다고도 생각하고 있어요.
Getting dunked! It's a double kill, made that a triple kill for Smith Darius.
He got it on the lantern, I can't believe it.
KOO Tigers have punched their ticket to the quarterfinals in London.
Welcome to the final day of the 2015 World's Quarterfinals. Once again, we're bringing you all of the action from the historic SSE Arena at Wembley, where two more contenders step onto the rift and vie for the final semi-final berth. Well, the fans are out in droves and pumped up in London. Some optimistic EU fans there as well. And of course, here are the teams KT Rolster and the KOO Tigers apparently sharing a bus to the venue, arriving just a short time ago. They will hit the stage in just a few minutes to see who advances to Brussels to face Fnatic. Welcome back, everyone. I'm James Dash Patterson, and staking a claim to the analyst desk today, our head coach of Europe's Rockcat, Jacob Yamato-Kennen Mebdi, North America's Aiden Zyrene Moon, along with Renegades jungler Alberto Crumbs Rengifo. Gentlemen, final day of the analyst desk here in LA for the quarterfinals. How does it feel?
You just gave it away. We're in LA.
I think people knew.
Everybody keeps asking me my solo queue games. They're like, how are you here?
Why are you playing on ping?
300 ping? Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm in LA, bro. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bittersweet, but I mean, this is a great game to end the quarterfinals on. KT versus KOO Tigers here. And this is just a Korea matchup from the semifinals, and I think we're going to get a really good series here, possibly all 5 games.
Now, to start us off, let's check how the things stand in the bracket. Yesterday, Fnatic were able to take down Edward Gaming in a surprising 3-0 series to secure their semifinal spot. We heard from the players themselves that they weren't even expecting to advance in just 3 games. So what does this say about Fnatic as a team moving forward?
Well, I don't think that the 3-0 really says anything to how they play. You know, EDG was a little sloppy, but focusing on the KT versus KOO, these two teams have a top-notch top laner, and they usually focus their strategy around these guys, and that's how we saw Fnatic win yesterday and really step up during the group stages. So whatever happens in the semifinals, it's going to be explosive in that top lane.
Yeah, for sure. Like in Fnatic's case, I think this is the best they've played ever. Like this best of 5 against EDG, even though it was a 3-0, it was by far the best Fnatic League of Legends we've seen so far.
I definitely echo those sentiments there. I really don't have too much to add off of that. I think that Fnatic has been playing an immaculate game so far, and their game up against oh my God, my brain is terrible. It's
EDG yesterday. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm still not awake.
You're still too excited about the great series that's coming ahead of us.
I really am. I'm just trying to look for it. But anyway, Fnatic versus EDG, that series came down to in-game shot calling after they were set up in Champion Select. And I feel like Fnatic walked away with better shot calling from Yellowstar and better setup from Daylor.
All right, well, they will be playing one of the 2 teams from today's series. So turning to that series, we're going to step inside Wembley Arena to meet our quarterfinalists.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from around the world, and here at the SSE Arena, hello, moms and dads. We are getting ourselves set up and ready for the 5th and final quarterfinal here before we move on to Brussels. Before we get the games underway, I think we need to meet our teams. Starting on the blue side, representing Korea's LCK, it's KT Rolster!
KT secures their spot in the quarterfinals.
In the top lane, it's Someday! Ganking from the jungle, it's Score! Helming the mid lane, Nagne! The on-point AD carry, Arrow! And roaming support, Peekaboo! FLICKR is your substitute support. And KT's coach, Oh Chang-jung. Put your hands together for KT Rolster! KOO Tigers have punched their ticket to the quarterfinals. The second team, the KOO Tigers! In the top lane, it's Smeb. In the jungle, Hojin. From the mid lane, Kuro. Their AD carry, put your hands together for Prey. And their support, Gorilla! Substitute jungler, Wisdom! And their coach, Nofei! Once again, put your hands together for the KOO Tigers! Both of these teams are fighting for the right to advance to the semi-finals in Brussels. It's KT Rolster taking on the KOO Tigers!
Our last two quarterfinal teams here. The last time we saw these teams play in a best-of-5, it went all 5. Blind pick to decide the series. KT getting the better of it that time around. We'll see if KOO is able to exact their revenge. Now that we've met the competitors, though, let's take a deeper dive into this Korean matchup, KT Rolster versus the KOO Tigers. Again, as I said, it's a rematch from the summer playoffs, the semifinals, where KT got the better of them this time around. Is that going to happen again, though?
I think these teams have been playing very solid and very almost one-dimensional just because of how much they rely on their side lanes to really carry them through the mid-game. And the KOO is a team that's been really known to dissect another team's play and really just shun them for the rest of their time and completely expose them. They've never quite done that against a Korean team, though. And I think that if they're going to do that today, this is the match to do it, because they already had a remake in which previously they were struggling a bit against KT during the regular season, but managed to go the distance against them in that best-of-5. So I do agree that it's going to be a bit more targeted, but the play is just going to come out and be spectacular.
Feel as well, simply because of the fact in the Korean League with the blind pick as a final game, if you rewatch the series between KT and KOO, you could really think in your mind that after that fourth game, that KOO really had better odds in a standard pick game because they really figured out the bans at that point.
And something that you look at here when you go for what KOO likes to do, KOO likes to do 5-on-5 fights. KT is really skirmish-oriented, and they control the map with vision extraordinarily well. You were talking about playing to their side lanes. I did some statistic research here. KT is the #1 ward per minute team in the world, and they've upped their game by 0.5 wards per minute. And just to give you some, because it's all relative,
between their regional play and
worlds, exactly. So their regional play 3.7 topped the world. Now they're at 4.2, which is absolutely insane. And the big part of this is Someday. Someday is the #1 ward per minute top laner in the entire world. He does so much work for his team. Not only is he that carry, he is providing so much vision. Level 9, he's always backing and getting his ward trinket, and it's always spinning on cooldown. This guy adds so much vision, and when you have that many wards on the map, you always have a teleport location. It gets him into these fights much easier.
That's exactly the kind of top lane play you expect from probably the best top laner in this whole tournament. Always going in for those deep wards puts such an amount of pressure, especially if you can help the jungler's job of tracking the other guy by putting 2 wards in the enemy camp. That puts so much stress into the opponent team. And I really want to see how they actually handle that. What are the timings for the sweepers and the pink wards for the KOO Tigers?
We talk about vision control. Someday's playing a big role in that, but of course the supports are one of the largest roles in that. I want to look at Peekaboo versus Gorilla. Peekaboo, we came into this tournament saying this is the guy who's going to pressure around the map constantly. He's going to team up with the jungle. He's going to invade your jungle. He's going to make those early roams and make the plays.
Yeah, Peekaboo was the guy that, you know, they were kind of a mediocre team. They were in the middle of the pack. Then he just went, bam, we have this playmaker now who just gets them online. KT had a problem closing games out, and Peekaboo really solved that for them. And Peekaboo's also #1 in wards for his role here at Worlds, and he's doing an outstanding job for the team.
The most standout thing about Peekaboo is when he gets to roam with score, so he gets freed up in the laning phase, and then they just go and take over the jungle so well. They can really just shut down an opposing jungler and support, but just being that better of a roaming squad. Though the way that SKT handled that was picking a lot of pushing lanes so that you would contain Peekaboo to the lane, and he was unable to find any roaming opportunities, which I think should be the approach that KOO take this game, because you do not want to leave this guy any room.
I feel like every time we talk about supports, we call them playmakers, we call them roamers. So that is, I think in this particular matchup, we have 2 great supports that are playmakers, that are roamers, and that is enabled simply because of their strong laning phase as well. They are able to push their advantages in laning phases, like where they are in a position where they push, and then they transition that across the map, which is beautiful to me.
And I think Gorilla is kind of a standout support here at Worlds in terms of playmaking that you're talking about. His laning is great, but when you get him to roam around the map, his thresh, he's making plays, whatever he's on, he's going to be able to create picks, and that's the type of playmaking that Gorilla does. And he gets his team back in the game, even if they're struggling and have that little deficit at the start.
You know, speaking of thresh, I do think that's going to be a highly prioritized support here, because unlike the other supports, thresh has a lot more versatility to his toolkit that helps the 2v2 roam squad that much more because of the threat of the lantern, getting somebody out of a sticky situation and really setting up plays, as opposed to how one-dimensional a roaming Alistar or a Braum could be.
Don't catch.
Morgana.
Let's bounce over to the mid lane though now, because this is a very interesting matchup of 2 laners who we have pegged them as being very passive support laners who probably aren't going to do much. If anything, we could, possibly ignore, because there's an earthquake on one half of the stage right now. But we can, possibly ignore the mid lane for a good portion of the game. But once we get to the team fight phase, that's where these guys really start to have their impact.
I think this is actually a really good matchup for both of them, because they don't have too much pressure on each other, and they like to scale up. They like to get to that mid game, play the Victors, play the Azirs, Cassiopeia and stuff like that, and then come into the team fights. but they're going to allow each other to do that. Unless one of them decides they're going to pull out a different play style, they're going to be very aggressive and try to blow the game wide open.
We've deemed them to be quite passive, but they usually go until they get to the point where the champion has enough items to just one-shot the other guy and just catch him out of surprise. So, for example, a lot of Victor play, Kuro being the one guy that's absolutely amazing Victor.
The Victor player.
I mean, gets that first laser upgrade, and then bam, he's all over you in the mid lane. So once they get the items, they go for it, but they're not the kind of guys that are just going to go for those really chip plays in the early game to try to put yourself at danger as well as your opponent.
It kind of speaks into the thing we talked about yesterday, for example, with Fabiven. He likes to be put in these matchups where he just farms for the major duration of the game on those Victors, on those Azir, and that gets heavily impacted by what happens on the sidelines, as we spoke about earlier. If someday gets pressure in top, he's going to transition that into mid. Same thing with the supports in the bottom. If they're going to get pressure, they're going to transition that into mid and cause pressure there as well. So watch out for that.
Yeah, these are both time bomb mid laners in my book. They are both they aren't volatile, but once they hit that timer and hit critical mass, the Azir is going to come at you, they're going to blow you up, and they're going to be taking down your AD carry, and you have to worry about your positioning when these guys get to their item break points.
All right, well, you touched on Someday's warding. We also just mentioned how the top lane focus might bleed into the other lanes once one of those two gets an advantage. So that's the final matchup I want to look at, Smeb versus Someday. Two of the better top laners in this tournament.
Absolutely, and yesterday we saw how important these top lane picks could be with Huni's Riven. Both of these guys play Riven very well also, and you know, Smeb he even had a pentakill in the LCK on the Riven, which is a very impressive champion once it's mastered to the fullest, and with all these high skill cap matchups like the Fiora and I guess Renekton to an extent, who knows what's left to be desired in the top lane that's for pick. So I think whoever has a final say and really a deeper understanding of how matchups operate in the top lane will have the edge. Unless, of course, they play Lulu and just make the game.
Like,
Please don't do that.
Personally, why I love Smeb as a player is because he has shown that he can play both ways. You know, these top laners that play the defensive way, like more the stake way. Sure, not to that level, but you get my point with the more tanky champions like Maokai, while Someday struggles on that when he doesn't get the priority on his picks. So personally, in this matchup, I feel they have more flexibility with Swep, but on paper, Someday is stronger with the current meta going on.
All right, well, with all this in mind, we'll be looking to you on social media to share your thoughts on our question of the day. We're asking, what has surprised you the most from quarterfinals so far and why? Send your responses to @LOLEsports with the hashtag Worlds so we can highlight a few a little later. Of course, now it's time for you gentlemen to put your money where your mouth is. Which is going to be our last team to make it on to the semifinals? Yamato, we're starting with you.
I'm going to say KOO Tigers. Simply because... Simply because they've shown. Come on,
okay, go ahead.
They've shown in the past that they are good at coming in with strategy. I feel like this particular matchup is Brute against Mind, and I'm going to go with Mind this time, simply because the last game is not a blind pick.
All right, Zyrene?
I'm going with KT. I feel like KT, just ever since I've been watching this team and they picked up Peekaboo, it's just a huge surge for them. They made it to the finals. They beat them in the best of 5, but that was, it's a funny history between these two teams because KOO is the innovator, right? They come up with the Juggernaut, they come up with the Malphite and the Victor, but then KT goes, oh, that's really smart. I'm going to take that. I'm going to perfect that. They are more successful with Juggernaut compositions than KOO is, even though they invented it. And I feel like KT is just the guys who go, thank you for the lunch money. Now I'm going to beat you with it. Jeez. And I love that.
Whoa!
You like that?
All right, well, we're 1-1. Crumbs, it's only fitting that we come to you for the tiebreak.
Yes, the pick for me is KT. I think that this team has a fantastic top laner with the impact that Peekaboo can provide. And even though I think that KOO's goal to win this game should be to focus on the bot lane area, you know, hasn't been as consistent as you would hope, I don't think that Prey has been stepping up big enough to actually punish him that hard. So I do think that KT's going to come out ahead, and I'm really putting all my money in Someday's mouth. As you said, put your money where your mouth is.
Put your money where your mouth is. Don't put it in his mouth. Come on, that's not. The guy has to go play League of Legends now, Crumbs. Well, the desk is favoring the team that won the last matchup between these two teams. We'll see if KOO can rebound. As we hand it off to our casters for the play-by-play, we'll look at how KT's Peekaboo rebounded from a season-ending injury to compete on the world stage.
When I was SKT, the last game was KT. That was my funeral. 그때 아팠을 때 여기랑 여기가 바늘로 찌르는 느낌이 들었고 또 돌덩이 얹은 느낌이라 되게 무겁고 I played too many games and doctor says oh you can't use anymore. That's why I leave SKT. And while I'm like just resting in my home, KT like wants to me to come as a support. My head coach just wants me like every time. I'm kind of like impressed about that, so I choose KT for my team. At first, when I joined the team, my team doesn't know how to communicate. I didn't thought KT is like a bad team ever, but maybe if I go in KT, I could make it better. All KT members like look so kind, so they're gonna follow my orders and like what I'm speaking. So I just tell what he needs to say and how to communicate. So that's why now we're on good on communication. That's why we're on quarterfinal.
Alistar's camping on the lantern.
하고 싶어. 버려. 할게. 나이스.
Oh boy! Peekaboo! That communication.
They wait very, very patiently, play conservatively, bait out a mistake, and then smash you.
My play style just like I just want to go anywhere where I want to go.
Peke's actually a little low. Oh, Peke's dead!
But after I played with SKT and we lost, and I thought, oh, there's my having a trouble with my playstyle, so I changed my playstyle, having aggressive and kind of calmness. So it's like a balance. If I made a mistake, team's gonna be like getting trouble. So I just need to like keep thinking. I need to do my like best.
I really made a lot of mistakes during these seasons and during the game. So I need to keep more hard about myself, and I just need to keep carrying our teammates.
I want to play with SKT, and I'm gonna beat SKT because we lost every game in LCK. So I really want to beat SKT, and we'll be the world championship winner.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Doa-Lundquist, and sharing the booth with me today for our series is Christopher Monte Cristo Michaels and Joshua Jat Leisman. It's Korea versus Korea, so we have to do the wave, right?
The double wave is mandatory.
There, and then sometimes one of these. There we go. But man, KT versus KOO Tigers. Last time we saw these guys, semifinal match in OGN Champion Summer, went the distance. It was epic, and I expect it will be equally, if not more, epic today.
It was a spectacular series that went all 5 games. Mind you, most of the games were pretty one-sided, but I'm really hoping we get our first 5-game quarterfinal this year at Worlds.
Yeah, that'd be great. And we saw some of the highlights. There was one closer game in that one where we saw the Diana backdoor in the Nexus. Really, really exciting series, and we had some interesting trends in there too in terms of pick ban. Of course, the patches are very different now, but I'm curious whether, for example, KOO will keep trying to ban out KT and what their strategy will be, the mid laner, that is.
Well, there's a lot of similar statistics between both of these teams, except the big one for me is when it comes to game time. KOO Tigers right now finish games 9 minutes quicker on average than KT Rolster, and you compare that to summer season, they were both pretty much the same, very long games. So something about the way KOO is playing in this tournament is letting them snowball the wins way quicker.
Because especially in the LCK, KOO Tigers really didn't differentiate themselves until very late in the game in team fighting. But they have actually been one of the best at 10-minute teams and the best at 20-minute teams by average gold differential in this tournament. I think a lot of that has to do that they were in the easier Group A. Specifically, the games they had against CLG really boosted those statistics because they murdered CLG in those games. But at the same time, Flash Wolves was also a team that made it to the quarterfinals. That's kind of what KOO has been playing against. That's the team that got first place in that group, and we're going to have to see the battle of a stronger group first place versus a weaker group second place.
Yeah, and it's really weird to see the identity of the KOO Tigers change in the way we're talking about right now in terms of having so much power in the early game, but messing up their team fighting late. And that's not something we were used to seeing from KOO. It was the exact opposite. Die in lane, have to play from a deficit in the mid-game, come back with good shot calling, come back with good team fighting, but it's been totally reversed here on the world stage.
Yeah, it has been like really, really different than what we're used to in Korea, but I think the thing with the KOO Tigers more than anything is these guys, after the way that IEM Katowice went earlier in the year, They really, really want to prove themselves that they can compete on the international stage. Here they are coming into the quarterfinals, look great in groups except for those losses versus the Flash Wolves, but they've got to play KT, kind of their arch nemesis in Korea right now. So it really is all on the line for these guys. I couldn't think of a more exciting way for them to come through the quarterfinals.
And I can't wait to see what KOO has to offer.
Yeah.
The desk talked about it. Yeah. They've been worldwide innovators. I mean, beyond what the desk said, also Veigar, Gorilla was basically responsible for getting that Event Horizon nerfed into the ground. And it's back. It's back now. It's been buffed a little bit. But I think they may have some special stuff. They didn't really have to show their hand in the group stage. I'm betting they've got something to show here.
Yeah, because I specifically think it's because they've had a fair amount of time to come up with these things. At the very beginning of the LCK season is when I think they showed the most innovation. Victor, which is such a common pick now, is a pick that KOO really brought into the scene. They also did a mid-lane Scion game against LeBlanc. It was ridiculous. But then I feel like when KOO struggled, the game changed very quickly, and players like KOO take a long time to master champions. Yasuo is an example of something he failed on at IM Katowice, but by the end of the summer split, he was a very good Yasuo. Azir is a champion he didn't win a single game with in the summer split, but he's played it 3 times in the group stage and looked fairly good. So I wonder, along with those picks he's been grinding up on, if he has yet another secret pick that can come out early on in this series, like we've seen in other quarterfinals, that can really surprise.
Well, that's the thing about the KOO Tigers, is their coach Koma always has some sort of crazy pick lurking just behind. I mean, in their best of 5 back in the semifinals for Champion Summer, they had that top Fizz that kind of went back and forth between Smeb and Someday. You mentioned the Scion game from earlier this year. Things are going to get a little bit crazy. And in that series, too, the big thing was Kog'Maw versus Ashe as well. Those 2 picks, the big engage with the Ashe versus a hyper carry with Kog'Maw. Do you think that's going to be something else we can sort of expect to be a thing in this match today?
Well, KOO has had 4 Ashe bans against them in 6 games, and the 2 games that Ashe has not been banned, it has been played by Prey. So this is a huge priority pick. They like to have their engage out of the AD carry position if they can have it, and that makes a lot of sense. We see teams like Fnatic going towards more hard CC AD carries like Kennen and letting the mid and top lanes really play squishier champions, play these carries, and I think it's a very good strategy for this meta.
Yeah, just to note, it is Prey's keyboard that is currently having some issues. They tested it before the game, but for whatever reason, right now it is malfunctioning. That's why we get to talk more KT.
You need a special keyboard for the mighty Prey.
How many Riot employees does it take to change the keyboard to that?
We're about to find out.
Looks like a large
right
number of Riot employees.
Quite a few.
We'll see if they can do it, though. Hopefully it gets fixed.
It's true, though. Like anyone, you don't need to be a pro gamer to know, like, if your keyboard's a little bit off, it feels like really bad. And then you have a great excuse to blame every mistake you make on.
Yeah, I mean, also,
Not that I do that,
as far as bans, you mentioned that there's been Ashe bans. There were also 4 Kalista bans against Prey. So as far as champions that have been targeted against the KOO Tigers, it has been fairly AD carry focused since, honestly, they've used Prey as a way of initiating in a lot of their games.
Well, I believe they have ran the Kalista Kennen, much like SK Telecom
They ran it in 1 game, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So that's a really strong combo. If you take out the Kalista, you sometimes can sort of take out the Kennen as well by proxy.
Yeah, you think the Kalista takeaway would be less priority because in his career, he's only played Kalista 6 times, and he's 3-3, 50% win rate on that particular champion. So it's not like when we think about Korean 80 Kalistas players, Prey doesn't really come to mind.
No, not really,
we're talking about Bang, we're talking about OQ, these guys. But Prey still drawing those bans.
Yep, and drawing those engineers and computer repairmen over to his desk as well right now. But the crowd's still pumped. It's still KT versus KOO. We know we're going to get to see some games. Even if we have situations like, Mord and Gangplank coming into a game undefeated and then still leaving the day undefeated.
Anything can happen at the World Championship, Joe.
That's true.
This just shows you the endless possibilities within League of Legends.
It's true. It's a wonderful thing. It's a world of rainbows, possibilities.
And wards.
And wards.
Yeah, the points
Lots of wards for KT.
The point Irene brought up on the desk was the fact that they place 4.3 wards per minute, which is the highest of all teams at Worlds. But specifically, I did a little bit of digging into how they do that. Because wards aren't just how much you place, it's how you activate your wards without spending a whole bunch of money on them. Because that's what I find the best about KT's ward strategy. They upgrade trinkets, warding trinkets specifically, faster and more frequently than all other teams. Top lane and mid lane, so Someday and Nagne, upgrade their warding trinket really, really early in every game. A lot of other mid laners will go sweeper early, and then additionally, Peekaboo has the earliest Sightstone timer of all supports at Worlds. He gets it at, on average, 7 minutes and 36 seconds into the game, which is exceedingly early. And then he also recalls more than other supports to refill his Sightstone more frequently. So they're actually getting these wards down free of gold cost, but obviously there's the time investment.
Well, it makes a lot of sense with the priority of Peekaboo and score in the enemy jungle all the time.
Well, it also says a lot about how KT likes to play the game. They like the vision-heavy style because they split push. That's what Someday really does very well. He knows his limits, and part of split pushing is making sure you're safe while doing so, so those ward upgrades are very important. Also, what interestingly that says about KT with Peekaboo and his recall timings is that Arrow is a very self-sufficient AD carry, and he always has been. He's in lane alone a lot, and these teams in the laning phase are strikingly similar. Gorilla likes to roam, Peekaboo likes to roam, Prey and Arrow are used to playing defensively on their own in the laning phase.
And I think it also speaks even more to KT's playstyle and whether or not this can be exploited by the KOO Tigers, because with them having the highest warding numbers in the game, it enables them to farm all 3 lanes in the mid game, specifically between the 15 and 30 minute mark. KT Rolster has the most CS of any team at Worlds because they are so proficient at farming in safe places and not getting punished with deaths.
You know, and things like that make that Mordekaiser pick for KT that one game even more surprising. I mean, obviously it's a big priority. Obviously it's a very strong champion right now, but it's not really the type of champion that KT or Arrow you would think would play. They were able to win with it. It looked a bit awkward. It's like we may finally have Prey up and ready. We'll see how he feels about it.
The keyboard has been resolved, but they're doing some quick tests. I think they're letting him hop in a quick custom game, make sure everything feels right, and then they'll be up into Champion Select.
The counterpoint, so where you're talking about the CS differential at 15 to 30. So we were looking at those numbers earlier today. 506 CS between 15 and 30 minutes for KT. 362 for KOO during that same time period. But KOO gets 21 more kills.
KOO farms champions.
Yeah, they farm other players. They farm the enemy.
KT has the most CS, but KOO actually has the most kills. So both of these teams are very proficient within the 15 to 30 minute period, but they have slightly different ways of gaining their advantages here. I wonder if it'll intersect within this game in the same way.
The first 15 minutes are quite similar, though, in terms of both have a lot of kills in the first 15 minutes compared to their opponents, but we're getting into Champ Select.
It is time. Picks and bans for KT Rolster versus the KOO Tigers. Game 1 looks like Kennen and Gangplank will be our first couple bans here. Elise to follow. And so, not wanting to deal with the Kennen is KT Rolster. Of course, KOO just going to ban out that Gangplank, which is not too surprising. Is the Mordekaiser going to get through, though? Because, again, you know, KT's style doesn't really tailor to that very well. They did play it once, but I wonder if KOO is going to kind of hang this in front of them.
Yeah, I'm curious what they're going to do, because the last time these two teams faced off, we saw KOO banning out Azir, Cassiopeia, Shen. Now, Cassiopeia not really in the meta, but some picks very much focused Ignagne. And the Shen now, even though we haven't seen as much of it in the top lane, Peekaboo, for the first time ever, played Shen supported Worlds. So now it is a flex pick for KT.
I think there is a huge pinch on Hojin's champion pool right now, especially if they lock in Rek'Sai with their first pick. Because Hojin's played 2 Elise games, 2 Lee Sin games, and 2 Rek'Sai games thus far at Worlds, and 2 bans have already been targeted specifically at him.
That said, Hojin is known for having pocket-pick junglers like Trundle and Sion that he's been actually quite successful on, but it's going to be a Darius first.
Wow, so focusing the jungle bans and still giving the jungle options over to KOO, but they want that Darius. Is Tahm Kench going to go over to the KOO Tigers? It is. Tahm Kench and Rek'Sai. Strong couple picks for KOO right off the bat. Smeb's happy about it.
Tahm Kench is so tremendous in this Worlds meta. Also, Gorilla has been putting in the hours to make it one of the best champions within his pool. It is his most played champion here in European solo queue additionally.
Yeah, and he's played 6 different picks so far, a unique support in each one of the KOO Tigers games. So this is only the first time that he's actually going to be on a support again. But I think he had the best Tahm Kench game of anybody so far at the World Championship.
Yeah. Dude, that was one of the most entertaining support games I think I have ever seen with Gorilla's Tahm Kench, so I cannot wait to see what he can do today. Gragas and Thresh picked up by KT. 2 more over to KOO, and of course, Peekaboo on that Thresh is a pretty huge danger. It's the champion that he's known for, so both supports getting some of their best champions, I think you could say right now.
I think so. I think KT's actually been fairly conservative with this early pick phase.
Yeah.
I also don't think they gained a huge amount of value from their bans, since we are seeing Rek'Sai versus Gragas, which is pretty much the junglers we see in every game. And KOO will bring out the Ashe. It's the third time in a row that it has not been banned.
It's interesting that we're seeing it paired with an Ashe and not a hyper carry like Jinx that we've seen most of the other times. Are we going to see the Kalista from KT? Interesting stuff happening here from the KOO side.
Absolutely. Because we've also seen Arrow mainly playing hyper carries. Kog'Maw and Jinx have been his two major picks. Specifically, he's done the most damage per minute on Kog'Maw, which he's played 3 times. It's what you'd expect out of KT, I feel like.
It does, but does it play into the Ashe too much?
It does, definitely plays into the Ashe.
I think you take Kalista here and try and dominate the laning phase if you can. This is a bit of an atypical draft from KT because almost always this team tries to counterpick for some days, so they're very confident in the Darius. But when we saw them first picking top lane on blue side against SKT in the Summer Championship, they took Fizz, and it really didn't work out for them. So I always get a little worried when I start seeing KT now first picking top laners.
Nagne is going to go with that LeBlanc in the mid lane. We were talking about this before the match today when we were looking at some stats.
Baby.
There's the mid lane Veigar for Kuro. So Kuro versus LeBlanc, and Smeb, of course, taking that Fiora up to the top lane. Thought maybe we'd see the mid ribbon, but nope, it's going to be the Veigar.
At first glance, I'm not a fan of KT's draft right now. They've picked a fair bit of skirmish and assassination and pick potential straight into a Tahm Kench. I feel like if you're going to be straight into a Tahm Kench, you need to pick a large amount of AoE damage. And also, they don't have very good ways of dealing with Kuro's Veigar if he starts to get ahead. So there's a lot of different ways KT can lose this game.
Well, we've seen the dangerous stuff that can happen when you hook somebody that Tahm Kench then eats and flashes away with. Thresh can go on a very sad voyage after that.
Yes, you can. You don't fish for catfish.
You don't.
With a hook.
He will eat you. Not a lot of muscle on
hands.
Not a lot of
go with
muscle
the
on
hand.
Thresh. Yeah, you got a noodle? Is that
got
what
a
you're
noodle.
You're bringing it in again.
The blitz.
We're not 10 minutes into this cast, and already Monte Cristo's bringing up the
fish
noodle.
for catfish with barrels this game. Squirrel's going to just knock him right back into the team.
I think so. Like shooting fish with a barrel this time.
The brute force way of fishing.
Who knows? Yep. A barrel gun? No one's gonna. Well, that sounds like the name of a real gun. Maybe it is. I don't know, they banned us here. But it's time, guys. We're moving on to the Rift, so share your predictions throughout the day by tweeting at LOL Esports with the hashtag KTWin or hashtag KOOWin, and we will see who moves on to the semifinals between KT and KOO, Korean rivals moving on to Summoner's Rift. And it is time, guys. Who's ready for some League of Legends?
I'm
ready. I guess.
I'm ready.
All right, that's enough. Enough for me.
I'm assuming Monty is ready as well.
I feel pretty ready.
All right, game 1. I'm just resorting to reading the screen in the front now. There we go. Welcome to Summoner's Rift, guys. And it will be a teleport for Nagne's LeBlanc. That's a bit different, isn't it?
Definitely is. Expected on the Veigar, but now I wonder what KT's strategy is going to be. Nagne has been, both of these players actually are LeBlanc players, which is a bit surprising considering normally they're control mages and they don't actually play that many assassins. But this is the one assassin that these guys have both always played. And Veigar will be a new one, though.
Quadruple teleport.
Yeah, and to speak to the LeBlanc versus Veigar matchup, I actually think it's pretty heavily favorable for LeBlanc in lane. More so when LeBlanc brings Ignite, though, because it's a significant amount of kill pressure. Later in the game, it gets very easy for the Veigar to just ult the LeBlanc, who's usually going a high amount of ability power, and you can almost always get the ultimate in to force the LeBlanc out of the fight after one rotation. So Nagne is really going to have to snowball this game, I'd say even harder, because he's not able to win the lane phase through Summoner Spell.
Yeah, and maybe they can get some sort of advantage out of the laning phase and start split pushing, but one thing that Prey is really extraordinary at is his use of Hawkshot. And that was a major factor in the first win against CLG, was how well Prey was timing his Hawkshot, watching the enemy jungler consistently, and being able to set up plays on the mid lane from the side lanes as a result. So that's something that we usually don't see on the screen, more just on the mini-map, but it's something you should be keeping an eye out for this game because Prey is so good at timing it.
I'm wondering how this mid lane matchup's going to go between Nagne's LeBlanc and Kuro's Veigar. I mean, when LeBlanc comes in with the distortion, that's a dash, so that gets caught in the cage.
Correct.
But the jump out is a blink, so it won't be. So Kuro's going to need to be really fast and kind of predicted to have any chance of catching.
Yeah, basically LeBlanc holds all the cards in that matchup because there is an arm time on the cage. Basically, Nagne will always be able to predict if he's going to get caught in the event horizon, and Kuro can't actually reactively use it because if he uses it after Nagne has burned the damage, he can still get out freely. The only thing he can do is place the event horizon on the point where the distortion was cast from, so that if he swaps back, he stuns himself then.
I mean, he picked himself into the matchup, so clearly he's got some confidence against this LeBlanc. We'll see if he can follow it up. Gorilla harassing Peekaboo. Peekaboo plays him in. There's the third. Peekaboo forced to flash away. Doesn't want to get eaten by that Tom Kench.
Well, really early troubles here. Peekaboo is trying to walk a little bit too close to that brush, and definitely is punished for it quite quickly into this game. And you know, they wanted to have some sort of advantage here with the Kalista, start using that lane bully status that this AD carry has, and they're just not going to get it now with a flash down.
Yeah, getting bullied right now by Prey and Gorilla. Score coming down, only 2 CS so far for Arrow.
Yeah, Ash's early laning phase is actually tremendously underrated. It's one of the strongest laners in the right situation, and it was made even stronger here by the fact that Gorilla and Prey did Gromp about 5 seconds faster than Arrow and Peekaboo did the Krugs, so they very easily got level 2 first, and as we saw, it wasn't properly respected by Peekaboo and Arrow, so he had to use his flash while he was out-leveled by the opponent bottom lane. That's actually a pretty big mistake there. If you know, you should know that you're going to be out-level 2, and you should almost never get caught as a level 1 versus level 2 in this lane situation.
Oh, definitely. Standard lanes, though, continuing on. Score moving up towards the top. They want to be a little bit careful because they know Hojin was lurking around in the enemy jungle. There he is. Score finding him, going to do a little bit of damage on his way out. Actually, Nagne coming up. There's the flash in response from Hojin. Meanwhile, Someday keeps Smed up in the top lane, but he may regret it. Smed comes in. Can he get the kill? Not quite. He flashes, tries to go over the turret. The turret hits him, and first blood goes to Someday. Smeb getting a bit overeager there.
And actually, that kill was caused by Nagne's teleport because Smeb could have retreated backwards, but the teleport LeBlanc secures first blood. He doesn't get anything out of it, so he loses mid lane pressure, but the top lane matchup is much more important.
For the team.
I am so surprised that you'd see that level of all-in from Someday because he was really willing to scrap, but Nagne had the time in the mid lane to make the teleport up there, so it's all coordinated. We can see there's no Veigar right there, and so LeBlanc easily able to respond to this, walking up the river and then using the TP.
Yeah, Smeb was able to outplay the first Decimate by getting inside the ring, and he's confident enough to do the all-in because the junglers were engaged down bottom. That flash forward, though, was the instant Smeb regretted his decision and gives up first blood.
Made a terrible mistake. Meanwhile, down in bot lane, things still progressing. Arrow pretty far behind in CS yet, but he has had a chance to catch up just a bit. And Someday, wow, not wasting any time going aggressive onto Smeb again. He's got that double Doran, so he's got the Ruby Crystal actually too. So he's got the sustain that Smeb is kind of lacking right now.
Yeah, with that one item advantage, it's going to be very difficult for Smeb to walk up on the minion wave right now. So here's Hojin ready to help.
Smeb trying to bait Someday back. Hojin comes in. There's a knockup. They know that Darius has no flash. Ward's thrown down. Someday in a lot of trouble. Can they take him up before he gets to the turret with that slow? I think they can. The heal was nearly enough. Someday pulls him in. Oh, and he gets 1 for 1. Someday already doing work on that Darius.
Just getting the Decimate off cooldown, hitting 2 people, getting the heal in was enough to buy him time to get back under the turret. And I love this Fiora-Darius matchup. It is so fun to watch in this top side. Smeb will get a kill in response, but it's been a wild one so far.
It really feels like Fiora-Darius is the essence of what they say when we call it a skill matchup, because it really depends on how they play. It depends on the item timings. Different breakpoints come out throughout the game that gives either one an advantage. And that was honestly a perfectly timed gank by Hojin, but Someday executed well enough in the escape that he traded the kill back. That gank almost equalized that lane entirely, but instead they just trade a kill, and Someday will maintain a small advantage.
Yep, pretty much picks up that long sword while Smed picks up his Ruby Crystal. Meanwhile, a little bit of action in the bot lane. And this one could get a bit bloody overall, too. I mean, coming into this, KT and KOO, besides SK Telecom, had the highest kills per game, the lowest deaths per game, so they really know how to make the plays that result in kills.
Well, not only that, though. Oh,
Level 6 here.
Oh, time to dive.
Yep.
They're gonna go
Darius will take turret first so that they can stack up bleed stacks if they want to go, but they're a little sloppy on the initiation there.
Yeah, Someday took a couple of shots right there walking back under the turret, so they're not going to be able to pull that one off quite yet. All right, stepping right there.
Yeah, that's enough poke that they're going to want to pressure Smeb off this turret or force a Rek'Sai to come up elsewhere. They haven't had eyes on Hojin, so there's going to be a little bit of trepidation on this gank. They're wondering if Rexa is going to come through, but they have all the entrances covered, so they think this is pretty much a safe dive if they want to go.
Should be. Score is right there, but yeah, again, they don't quite know where Hojin is, and they're actually going to give that one up for the moment. Recall for someday, so will they decide to go for it? Smeb coming down, and it doesn't look like anything's going to happen right now. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, KOO has fallen a little bit behind in CS, but you kind of expect that in this matchup.
And when it comes to the early game, we briefly touched on this before, but in the first 15 minutes of the game, KOO was up 3.2 kills for every death that they had, and KT was up 2.25 kills for every death that they had in the group stage.
Wow.
So
one of those things will change.
One of those things will change, but they like to fight. They've been very successful at acquiring kills early. These are the top 2 teams at Worlds so far in terms of kill-to-death ratio pre-15 minutes.
Someday going at it again.
Beautifully done.
Yeah.
This matchup is almost entirely decided on 2 things. It's the riposte timing by the Fiora, and also Darius being able to land the outer ring of his Decimate. Whichever one of those goes more beneficial for either the Fiora or the Darius is generally what swings the matchup.
True enough. CS nearly dead even though. Someday protecting himself against some ganks, which you know Hojin really wants to make happen. I don't know. We seem to have hit a bit of a lull in the action for now.
Yeah, but at the moment, KOO is actually swapping the lanes, and the question will be whether this was scouted out by KT because they haven't pinged anyone missing. Here
Are you looking for a challenge? Whoa, the entire KOO team almost showing up. There's Nagne as well, came in with his teleport. Someday is going to get taken out, and now they're going to go after Nagne. Can't quite catch him though. Whoa, big barrel from Score, and KOO takes a couple big turret hits. KOO might stick around to take down this turret, but man, everybody wanted a piece of Smeb in that top lane.
Well, they needed to shut him down, right? He was getting too much of an advantage, so they send all 5 people up into that top side to go ahead and make a play right here. We did see Gorilla hit that level 6, try and come in very quickly, and they caught Someday unaware. And now KT scrambling to get this turret.
Yeah. KT is now trying to respond to KOO's great lane swap that sent 5 people up top. I think overall, the fact that KT was able to keep 2 people down in the bottom lane means the gold's going to stay pretty close. Mainly that gank top lane was KOO's way out of losing matchups. They were losing that top lane extremely badly. It's actually something the Flash Wolves did against KOO when KOO had a huge amount of pressure early on in the game, is they lane swapped their AD carry and support top lane later on in the game to equalize it. Now they're trying to swap back, but they might be a bit out of position.
Oh, it's fighting time in the bot lane. Arrow comes in, throws Peekaboo on towards Prey. Prey eaten by Gorilla. Gorilla in a lot of trouble, has to pop that E. Throws himself over to the other KOO players coming in. Nagne backing away. Smeb with the first kill onto Nagne. KOO with an early lead in this fight. Someday and Arrow in a little bit of trouble. Peekaboo already on the way out, and Someday gets knocked up by Hojin's Rek'Sai. It's going to be another kill. Smeb grabs it yet again.
All 5 members of KOO are always in the same place. I mean, Gorilla coming in with the Tom Kench in the first fight, this time just being there as KOO is rapidly just alternating the sides of the map, trying to catch out KT, and it's working. They're gonna get the first dragon.
And I'm wondering what is necessarily going through KT's heads right now, because they have been the team that wards the most, and they have been the team that's gone upgraded yellow trinket on their mid laner every single game. But this match, they've gone sweeper on the LeBlanc. They have a very late Sightstone timer on Score. He hasn't even begun to build it yet, and they are actually losing because they're not tracking where KOO is on the map. They are not doing the things that they have done throughout all of the group stage in order to become 5-1 and get here, and they're getting punished because of it.
Well, this is looking good for KOO because KT has been opting into these fights. The bad side of what KOO is doing is that you try and load 5 people into one lane, and you lose pressure across 2 lanes on the map. So it's been functional because KT has been willing to scrap out with them. If KT starts to play a little bit more defensively, they can punish with turrets.
Well, I think to keep in mind, too, is the last time these 2 teams met, KOO did win the first game as well, and KT still took the series.
And I feel like specifically, though, if KT wants to be able to play defensively, they need to have the vision because they're being surprised by these 5-man ganks, and they can't accurately gauge that there are actually 5 people there. So until they get the proper wards up on the map, I think KOO will continue to be able to roam 5 people and create numbers advantages.
And we saw the dragon stats come up there too. KT actually, surprisingly, they're 5-1 in the group stage, but they actually lost more dragons than they secured. Meanwhile, the KOO Tigers, much more dragon focused, about 2-to-1 ratio on those dragons secured versus lost. So KT really needs to tighten up their control over that objective. And if you're KOO coming in, you start to think, hey, maybe we should prioritize this, try for that 5 dragon stacks, and that's what's going to get us the win here.
I wouldn't be surprised. It is odd, though, because KT, did prioritize those Dragons so much in Korea and Champion Summer. So to see them kind of play a bit of a different style here at Worlds, maybe something that a lot of people are expecting. And I think KOO's got it right as far as trying to fight and control those early on. Doesn't look like KT's going to be able to steal their blue. KOO's going to take that one for Kuro.
Now this big swing in the top lane, too. All of a sudden, Smeb starting out 0-1. Now 4 kills. 4-1, and they've managed to keep Someday down. And I think what they're doing is so smart, because it's when Someday starts to get ahead and become that unstoppable split pusher that KT really gets rolling. So they're just throwing a wrench in the gears there.
It seems, too, that like Peekaboo and Score have not been able to do what Peekaboo and Score are kind of known for doing, which is get in the enemy jungle, put down a lot of wards. You look at the map right now, not a lot of KT wards on the KOO side. And the thing is these two teams know each other really, really well. KOO knows exactly what KT wants to do with their jungle and support, and they're doing a great job of stopping it.
I would agree. Gonna get a free turret right here, no defense.
Yep.
Arrow popping down.
That'll help.
From the jungle, but easily taken. And gonna get a freeze on the other side, though.
Yeah, at this point, though, KOO will need to get some actual deep wards if they want to make their next move. They've been able to hawk shot things down a little bit. I think they're mainly able to get that turret. Was that the Abyssal Voyage
Used to get
out?
To the so, yeah, what happened was KOO pushed forward right there. They didn't have a lot of wards in the river,
so they were afraid they were getting.
They were afraid that they were going to get collapsed on, especially since LeBlanc's teleport was up. So they go ahead and use the Tahm Kench ult just to secure the turret and get out.
Makes sense.
And this is what I love about this Abyssal Voyage is as this tournament has progressed, we've seen more and more use of the Tahm Kench ult. Started coming in. Nobody really using it in an interesting or a flashy way, but we're seeing more and more ways to use it as the players get more comfortable with this champion.
Well, between 2 teleports and Rek'Sai and Tahm Kench ult, KOO can basically be anywhere on the map they want anytime.
Ash Arrow, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that may be one of the reasons Nagne, instead of going for Ignite, went for Teleport, because they were realizing that they were so outscaled in globals here, and that's a large part of what's been winning teams games here at World. So they're trying to keep up a little bit, although I feel like KT is shooting themselves in the foot a little bit early here, not upgrading yellow trinkets early, going sweeper on LeBlanc when Nagne has been doing nothing but upgraded warding trinkets, and they are getting a little bit out-roamed on, and they are going to be more vulnerable to picks, I feel like, because KOO has the initiation tool with the Ashe.
Yeah, they definitely do. And we're getting into the point now. We talked about 15 to 30.
A little bit of action onto Kuro, but Nagne not really finding anything. Peekaboo not landing any hooks.
Got the flash, though. That's pretty big.
Helps, certainly, against a champion like FLICKR that doesn't have a lot of maneuverability.
For 15 minutes, this is where KT, they like to farm a lot. This is where KOO likes to kill you. So we'll see who gets the better end of this, because KT has been a great team at farming all 3 lanes, but KOO, this is when they want the plays to happen. They want to fight you. They want to skirmish. And KT, the mass wards are starting to come down as they regain control over the topside river.
Yeah, now things are starting to swing just a bit, but they've got to protect this mid lane turret. If KOO takes this out, along with the bottom lane, they'll have really good dragon control. KT, though, going to deny them for now. Someday it looked like he wanted to be sneaky, but nope. Hard to be stealthy when you're dribbling a basketball.
It's too noisy, especially trying to dribble it in water. I'm not actually sure how that works.
You don't see James Bond dribbling a basketball or anything like that.
You don't see anybody dribbling a basketball in a river.
No. Well, you see people try, but they fail pretty miserably. Oh, well. I'm sure they'll invent something for James Bond. If he wants to play basketball in a river, he can.
Yeah, they invented an invisible car. I'm sure bouncing a ball on water isn't that difficult.
How hard can it be? Come on, Q, get on that. Seriously. Well, Someday just pushing up to the top lane as well.
Yeah, I will say, though, we mentioned the 10 to 15-minute jump that KOO had so heavily in the group stage, the largest of any team. They actually averaged 2,300 gold advantage specifically between 10 minutes and 15 minutes, and we're thinking, it's just because of the group stage. They had a 2,000 gold jump between the 10 and 15 minutes against KT in this game. They have been very good at making that nice rotation that leads to a team fight win against pretty much every team at Worlds, and they did it again here against KT.
And here comes Dragon. Second one just came back. Wondering where the first one went. He'll probably find out soon. Can KT take it, though?
You think the Dragons will stop just flying back into that one pit.
There's
like a pile of dragon bones at the bottom. Maybe they shouldn't be here.
There's like a big dragon cave underneath, and there's some dude who's like, all right, who wants to go to Dragon Funland? And they're like, me. And he's like, George, it's your turn. They open the door, and he flies out, and everyone's like, oh, I'm so jealous. I'll be next. Little did they know. It's really kind of messed up when you think about it.
And then like 25 seconds later, it is dead on average because these teams get it so quick.
Nobody knows that, though. The dragon's underneath the dragon pit. They don't know about this. Somebody should tell them.
Yeah, the cruelty to animals is pretty real.
It's horrible.
Isn't it a mystical beast?
Oh, mystical beasts can be animals.
That's true.
Where are you, mystical beastist?
We just need a new one. People for the ethical treatment of mystical beasts.
Huh. The P-tempt?
Doesn't have quite the same ring.
Not really,
here,
no.
does it?
Well, nobody really willing to go for the dragon so far right now. KOO just grabbing their blue buff, and we'll see if they can move around it. They've got wards down, but KT paying a lot of attention to the map right now.
Yeah, the item breakpoints aren't as in the favor of a team with a lead as they kind of should be. There's already a Negatron cloak on Nagne. A lot of this would actually have to be a pick created by KOO, which is why I think they're waiting. KOO doesn't have the advantage if they just group up and dare them to fight, but if they can actually get a catch, or will it be Gorilla getting caught?
Oh, Gorilla may have gotten caught here, but here comes Prey, teleports all over the place. Gorilla, Prey on the run, Kuro and Smeb coming into challenge immediately onto Someday, who just gets destroyed. KT on the run already. We'll see how far KOO wants to chase, but they can really turn on that dragon anytime, and that's exactly what they're gonna do.
Yeah. Really sure what Someday was thinking. They're right into 5
Want to be hero.
Yeah, one of the strangest things about double TP on both sides is you're never 100% sure who is coming in when every teleports are there.
It's true.
So maybe he didn't think he was going to come in right onto a baby cage from Veigar, but specifically, that's one of those teleports you almost have to cancel because his team was not in position. He should have seen the beginning of the Ren Horizon because he was stunned the instant he came in, and it's 4th death there for Someday. He's actually getting punished pretty hard.
He was playing so well in the early game, but now I really feel like a lot of desperation coming in from Someday here in the mid lane. And he should feel desperate with KT falling farther behind, losing that second dragon. It's got to be starting to make him sweat a bit. Oh, Gorilla, he's fishing.
I feel like fights that begin by Tahm Kench taking damage almost always favor the Tahm Kench. My experience through all of the Tahm Kench games at Worlds.
Relish, isn't it?
Yeah, that fight, Nagne ended up blowing his TP too, trying to come in from behind. Really disjointed, poor engage there from KT.
Well, you got to wonder how experienced they are with playing with this double teleport. It was never a huge thing in Korea in the summer. It's something that I feel like the teams from that region are still kind of learning a bit about.
Yeah, it's definitely something that many of the teams here at Worlds from across regions have had to take a lot more seriously. We thought this is the way the mid lane was going to go at the World Championship, just given the champion pools and the opportunity to do so.
What I feel like is so interesting about this matchup is the double teleport was more for the controlling mages that don't have solo kill potential. I didn't necessarily expect to see teleport on an assassin.
Yeah, you think you'd still want to go with something like Knight instead.
Yeah, because then you can out-pressure the person teleporting and stop his ability to TP.
One wonders.
Especially since they have to kill this Veigar early in the late game, and they could do that with a LeBlanc flank, because being a little bit sneaky on the side, using the control of the vision, but it's not going to be quite so much of an option in this particular matchup.
Yep. KT pressuring that mid lane now. Never mind, they're not.
Well, they're trying to, but we've kind of been over this discussion of Veigar and how I think it's going to be a massive pick throughout the rest of Worlds because he has almost everything that is currently valued in the game. Great late game scaling, great siege, great wave clear. He can assassinate other squishes coming at him. He's a strong team fighter. The only weakness is his mobility, and he is attackable in that sense. But if you're positioned well in the hands of a good player, it is one of the most powerful mid lane picks.
Yeah, we talked about him kind of as a new Victor, a little bit less mobility, but counterbalancing that with some insane single target damage and an ability to punish AP champions both in the mid and the top lane should they come through.
Well, man, if you get hit by an Ash arrow, that's just like a golden ticket for Veigar to walk up and destroy you.
I mean,
instant death.
You're not living through getting hit by an Ash arrow if the KOO Tigers fire it because they're going to chain it straight into Event Horizon, and that's going to be it.
Yeah, and they're going to take the mid lane turret.
And that's the siege right there, Event Horizon around the turret. So if you want to walk up to wave clear, you're walking into your own death. Unless you can set up flanks, but at the time, KT doesn't even have their teleports up right now, so a really smart move for KOO to siege in that particular situation. KOO is actually very vulnerable to flanks, especially if they're using their Event Horizon in a siege situation, but they were very safe to do so in that situation.
KOO's doing such a good job at moving around the map in a group too, and we talked about, when you move in a group like that, you let the other lanes get behind, but they've got enough pressure across lanes now that they've got the time to do that, I guess, and make it work.
Well, the pushing pressure really isn't there for KT.
I suppose they have to try to match KOO, don't they?
Arrow's still waiting on that Ruinous Hurricane, so he can't wave clear as fast as he would like. So this is a great time for KOO just to set up this Veigar siege.
Yep.
Look at the kiting right there. There's just nothing coming in. You shoot out that volley, you put down the event horizon, and there aren't very many options. It really is up to Someday and Nagne to try and get a flank here. And Arrow has to farm right now because that Ruinous Hurricane is so important to controlling the minion waves so that KOO just can't group so freely.
Can that even really stop the siege, though? I mean, the attack range on Callista, if Veigar walks up and again, puts that event horizon down near the turret, can you get close enough to even clear the wave?
It's mostly about clearing the side wave so they can't just group with no punishment. They have to. They will be forced to lose minions onto their own turrets if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, KT has to be ahead of the play of the 5 people grouping in the mid lane and create split lane pressure, and that in turn can set up the threat of teleport flanks. If KT ever gets in a situation where their side lanes aren't pushed once again, they're basically losing that inner mid lane.
Makes sense. Praying Gorilla pushing up this top lane a little bit, taking a detour to make sure that the minions are going their way. And KT just kind of seems afraid to try to really push out at all. They've got a couple wards a little bit into the top jungle for KOO, but it's not really doing them a lot of good right now. Dragon in 1 minute. And if KOO gets 3 in a row, KT has really got to start being terrified. They're worried now. They'll be terrified if that third dragon goes over to the KOO Tigers.
Yeah, especially since they've got the Gragas engage going for them, but that's about it. Yeah. And KOO just has so much heal and kiting potential that fighting around that dragon is a very unattractive option for KT.
And the blue buff. Oh, goes to Hojin. Whoops. Wojin.
We actually haven't seen that much.
No.
Yeah,
it's actually been surprisingly infrequent. I think this is the first one I've seen.
Well, congratulations to Hojin. First one to steal the blue from his mid laner.
Well, at least he can get cooldown reduction.
I know.
Congratulations.
I really need it.
More tunnels,
Oh, see, that's exactly what Kuro wants to do to Nagne. As soon as he distorted in, he placed the event horizon right on the start of the distortion, so Nagne was either trapped inside or he had to go back and stun himself. Ends up burning his passive on it.
Yeah, very nice. Lost a lot of health on that. KOO Tigers sieging that tier 2 in mid lane now. Score trying to come from the side, but he's getting zoned a bit.
Now the teleport.
That's right, teleport coming in, and Nagne tries to do a bit of damage, but Gorilla just blocks it. Just eats Hojin right up.
Once
Digs
again.
him right out of the ground, I guess.
That's an example of why Tom Kench is spectacular against pick compositions. As soon as someone was beginning to get caught, Gorilla could just waddle over and completely stuff that attempt. Now KOO is set up in the mid lane with good split push pressure in one lane. They can actually threaten either Dragon or Baron because they are set up so actively in the mid lane, and they've already burned Nagne's teleport, which is quite honestly the main flank at this point, since Someday is yet to pick up home guards and is needed consistently in the lane, so he doesn't have time to go back to base to charge his home guards and get off a good Darius flank.
Yeah. I kind of feel bad for Rek'Sai. You're burrowing, you're cool, and then some guy shows up that can not only burrow like you can, but can take people along for the ride in his mouth. It's like, great, well, I guess I'm kind of boring now if I'm Rek'Sai. Looks like third dragon being started by the KOO Tigers. And will KT be able to stop this? They need to stop this.
If there was a time to stop it, it would be now, because they have not got a pick before the dragon.
Coming in, waiting to try to smite it away. KOO breaking out for the moment. Oh, Score takes the dragon for KT Rolster. Arrow comes in onto Arrow. He's going to cleanse it immediately, and KT trying to kite away. Kuro gets bounced in, though. He's in trouble. No, gets picked up by Gorilla, of course, but knocked over the wall. In fact, Someday got that kill. And now KT comes in. A huge apprehend by Someday, and KT all over the KOO Tigers. Even the challenge from Smab wasn't enough, and there goes Gorilla. That is nearly a clean ace for KT Rolster.
Credit to KT Rolster for taking a fight and playing well, but a big mistake by KOO Tigers to not prep that fight with vision or a pick of some kind. They just allowed KT a free attempt at a Dragon Steal and then a full straight-up 5v5 engagement.
You can't respond with the arrow here, so the Event Horizon goes down, it just zones out while the Dragon dies, and at this point, KOO gets very greedy. With the Event Horizon down, shooting the arrow is not as attractive, especially when it hits the Callisto running Cleanse. And right here, Peekaboo zones him out. Kuro gets hooked. So poor positioning from the Veigar. Gorilla tries to save him, but he just dies inside the belly from the damage over time. And then Someday comes in with a huge apprehend.
Big body slam right into a 3-man apprehend, and it is lights out for the KOO Tigers.
Someday Score and the Hurricane from Arrow did so much work in that fight, but specifically it was just a very poorly played setup by the KOO Tigers. They lost all of their zone control, and we mentioned how they're vulnerable to flanks because they actually have a fairly not a very mobile team composition with the Veigar and the Ashe, but they have tremendous setup. They sacrificed their setup and they allowed KT to then use the mobility of LeBlanc Gragas and Kalista to get in on them. But now they're trying to shut down Someday yet again.
Trying to save Smeb. Someday in a little bit of trouble on the run now. KOO is all over him and he is out of there. Even the ultimate can't save him, and Smeb topped up with that heal. After the kill, he's 5-2-2 now, so still doing okay. Gold lead is in favor of KT. They do have the pressure right now, but they'll need a little bit more from that. We're able to pick up the Baron too and all that.
Baroned up minions, Ashe Arrow down, so they're feeling pretty safe about this siege.
Yep. Chasing KOO, whoop, there we go. Score. A little bit of trouble, knocks Smeb away, has to burn his ult just to stay alive. So how much can KT get done with this Baron buff?
Well, that's going to be the question. They already wasted it a little bit by sacrificing Someday right there, putting him in a vulnerable position where he could get killed. And so now we've got a little bit of waiting to do. One thing that's a bit interesting here is we haven't seen the Aegis come out yet. Score has intriguingly decided to build a Frozen Heart in this game, which I really don't think is the priority when we're playing against a Veigar.
I mean, clearly they're worried about Smeb, but still, yeah, late game, that Veigar is going to do extreme amounts of damage.
I can kind of understand it. If Kuro wants to use his ultimate on Score to kill him, KT's probably saying sure. Then Arrow, Nagne, and Someday are going to be able to do work. So I can see the logic behind it, not to mention with the Cinder Hulk and the Mercury Treads, it will be hard for Kuro to one-shot him anyway. I also have to mention the frontline power of KT and how interesting it makes these mid to late game fights. Because if Someday and Score get to a tanky enough point where an Ashe Arrow will not kill them, and if Peekaboo can complete the Mikhails, the lack of frontline for the KOO Tigers will create incredibly difficult teamfight situations for KOO. Late game Fiora, as strong as you can get, if you're not finding the right initiations into teamfights and you can't get through the other team's tank line, you become extremely ineffective.
Enough, well, KOO just wants their blue buff right now. They're not going to get it though. Went over to Arrow, able to steal it with that Ren. Meanwhile, mid-tier 2 goes down in favor of KT. They got the turret. Can KOO punish this at all? Doesn't look like it. Looks like they just have to defend their inhibitor turret.
These event horizons haven't really impressed me from Kuro this game. He's had a couple of good ones, but he seems to be throwing it down too early and not really considering the rest of the crowd control on his team, because that one spell is incredibly crucial to how they're going to teamfight or even defend these towers.
Positioning does seem off a bit. KT going after that tier 2 down and bottom now. And KOO really had everything going for them.
KOO
That fight over the third dragon turned it all around.
KOO is right now trying to defend without the Ashe Arrow, so there's no good threat of them initiating. Their split push pressure has all but died at this point, because it seems like Someday, especially at level 16, currently has the power spike over the 5-kill Smeb, so they can't send him safely over in that direction. KT is really taking control of this game off of that Dragon and then Baron.
Yeah, Smeb has had to itemize a bit awkwardly for MR, however, in this particular game, which is a little bit rough if we're talking about that split push one-on-one between Someday and Smeb with Fiora versus Darius. So we'll have to keep track of how that's going to go. Does finally buy a Chain Vest, so that should be a little bit more helpful. And KT, looks like they just want to push the lanes out. They recalled early, stop the siege. They really need to set up for this dragon.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, it's only 35 seconds or so until that next dragon comes up, so if the waves aren't pushing your favor, you're going to have a lot of trouble trying to secure it.
And I do want to point out the change in strategy mid-game here by KT. They swapped to a upgraded warding trinket on Nagne to get better vision.
There we go.
And then he also bought green wards on top of that. So the warding trinket itself was enough to reach your ward cap. He's only buying the green wards to then replace his own wards on the map and reposition, because it is so important that KOO doesn't get a surprise initiation on KT right now. That's the only way they get back into the game.
They're trying, hiding in that brush for a moment. Going to clear some wards out. They want that third dragon, or fourth dragon, or their third dragon stack, that is.
This game could still end. I mean, it's not that much of a goal difference at this stage, and one good arrow from Prey could really turn things around and open up this match.
It's a close game. If KOO gets the fight they want, could end right there, but the same could be said for KT, and I feel like we're seeing a lot of what we saw in that last best of 5 that we saw in the semifinals for Champion Summer between these two teams.
Yeah, very tight games. Yeah, pretty evenly contested. KT just trying to get the control over the mid and the bottom side right now. They've got great wards in the bottom for LeBlanc right now to keep split pushing up, so Nagne will feel very safe. And KOO just gonna back right off as the waves start to hit their tier 2s.
Pretty much. I'm wondering how much AP Kuro has right now, how much he's been able to build over the course of the game.
Let me tell you.
Find out.
700 is the answer.
Yeah, he's gained
lower than I would have expected.
He's gained 200 from his stacking as of now. And he's also gone for the death cap early, which many consider to be the suboptimal build. You get so much bonus AP, you almost want to go Void Staff's second item.
Yeah.
But instead, he's just going for the big numbers.
Interesting. Well, KOO going for the tier 2 down in mid lane here. KT may try to go onto this though someday. Back.
That's a teleport.
Teleport. He's coming in. KOO Tigers on the run already. Teleport from Nagne as well. Someday. Trying to flank, trying to bottle in the KOO Tigers. Smeb goes in onto Score. He's going to get turned on immediately though. Pops that ultimate onto Score. Can't get the kill. Can't get the heal. Pickaboo in the mid lane. There's a kill for Arrow now. Score goes down, or rather Smeb goes down. Someday in the team all over the KOO Tigers. There's the ult, and here come the resets. Flash with the apprehend as well. Nice grab onto Kuro from Pickaboo. And this fight is all KT. Triple kill already for Nagne.
Yeah, KT completely steamrolls KOO in that straight-up engagement. They had good flanks that exposed the event horizon early from Kuro, and then KOO really just had no chance against the power of this KT composition.
Someday just rolling in with the home guards. That's been a specialty of Someday for a long time. Great TP flanks, finds it again, baits out the event horizon, and there's no more defense for KOO. They try and split, but this is going to be the end of the game.
That's right. Hojin doing everything he can, but the timers are just too long, and there goes the Nexus. Game 1 goes to KT Rolster. GG.
Very competitive game. Back and forth there. That one fight at Dragon got KT back in it after they made some mistakes in the early game, started to fall behind in kills, and you could see KOO did everything they could to try and control Someday.
Yeah, it really felt like for about the first 20 minutes of this game, KOO was playing their composition exactly how they intended. But then after that point, as we actually saw many times during the group stages, KT found that one mistake the opponent made and then never relented the advantage gained off of that fight. After the Dragon fight, KOO really had no chance, it felt like.
Yeah, and I mean, it was still competitive to the end. If they would have had that miraculous team fight, if they would have had that Astro that they wanted, maybe they could have team fought their way back into the game, but I think we're in for a very good series here. Game 1 already looking pretty close, and I've got a feeling this one certainly could go the distance.
I had my questions about that TP LeBlanc, but honestly, when they needed those flanks in the late game, they were able to actually pick them up. Had some misfires, but again, like you're saying, after that Dragon fight, it really felt like KT figured out what they had to do to win that game. They were never going to kind of attack from one side again, and instead setting up, of course, Someday's teleports and just drawing out the abilities they need. You only have hard CC on one front, and you've got a lot of squishy champions if you're KOO, so just take it away from them, basically. Force them to attack you on all sides.
I almost feel like what KT needed to do is just kind of be KT again. You know, get that warding trinket in the mid lane, get those wards in the enemy jungle, and what do you know? Playing like KT gets a win for KT.
That's exactly what I was going to say. They just got the wards down, and at that point, the picks stopped happening. Who would have thought?
Pretty shocking, isn't it? Yeah. Well, we'll see if they bring that in Game 2 or not. I mean, KOO Tigers, obviously, both these teams have a lot of picks they can try out, a lot of different strategies they can maybe employ. So we'll see. Right now, we're going to go to check in with Dash and our desk to see what they make out of KT's Game 1 win.
Thank you, Doa. Want to start with the picks and bans because we saw a huge priority placed on this Darius right out the gate for Someday, who performed on it extraordinarily well through the group stages. But this means you're leaving up the Tom Kench on the other side, which, as a caster team, we've been throwing around that this might be the strongest champion in the tournament.
Yeah, well, going into the matchup, okay, how can the supports get themselves the best pick for their team? You know, Tom Kench obviously has a lot of tools to prevent people from dying, but don't you forget about Thresh. Thought Thresh would be a very powerful pick, and it really was. You know, he also has an even more threatening way of saving people with that lantern. I mean, we saw in the group stage how creative they can get with those lantern saves. I did not like KT's composition. I felt like it had a bit of a lull in terms of ending the game if KOO were to play the game in a 5-man death ball, which they tried in the early game and mid-game, but eventually they kind of stopped.
I feel like the big thing that I want to highlight when it comes to the draft is KT side, they kind of have this early game going on for them. They have the Rex side, the stronger jungler. They have the LB as well in the mid lane. So I felt like the big play for me that KOO Tigers that kind of sealed, didn't seal the deal, but in my mind could have sealed the deal was the big power play that kind of, when they used the Tahm Kench ult to put 5 people top lane with the Rex side, which was beautiful to me because KOO Tigers as a team, I feel if they're grouped as 5, they are the strongest. And KT, to me, when they're split up, as they were in the later parts of the game, they are the strongest.
Yeah, and that's what I think ended up happening is KT were trying to just... KOO was running KT around the lanes, picking them up, but then they started having 5-on-5s, and KT goes, wait a second. That's not what we're supposed to do. We should be flanking these guys. We should be coming from the sides. And then they figured it out. And that's one of the things I love about KT is their warding strategies. And you heard it on the desk there at the very end, that when they get those wards down, they place more wards than any team in the entire world per minute. That gives you so many TP flank opportunities. That gives you those deep wards. That gives you that pressure that you can play around. And that's what started happening is we saw multiple TP flanks come in from Someday, and then he was able to execute on the Darius. Even though he had the most deaths for his team, he also had the most kills. So a lot of participation there.
Now KT ekes out the win, due largely in part to a massive team fight around the Dragon 26 minutes into the game. And Zyrene, I'm going to let you take this one away. 5 for 1, plus Dragon, plus Baron off the back end of this.
It was an incredible swing because when you look at these compositions, you think there's going to be such a hard time for KT to close this game out unless they get a large lead. But what ends up happening in this fight is everything basically goes wrong for KOO. The event horizon is used early, and you'll see it here, stun nobody. And then the arrow comes out on the only person who can cleanse it and negate it. And then after that, the hook comes out that ends up hitting Veigar. It hits Kuro. Dragon goes over to score. They're like, oh no, okay, here comes the arrow. Cleanse it. It's out. Hojin no longer has a gap closer. Here comes Luck. Look at this hook onto Kuro, pulls him right into the barrel at the right angle, and then he flashes, and so does Gorilla. So 2 flashes are down. Now Someday decides it's time to go in. They get the kill onto Veigar, and then they throw them in the choke point. You're there with a Darius and a Hurricane Callista right on Spike.
I think the biggest issue to me when I see this fight is KOO Tigers, they kind of forget what their composition is about the moment they lose the Dragon. They are supposed to be the ones kiting. Exactly. They're walking right into a Darius, into a LB, into a Callista, and they've burnt all of their key abilities. They're the ones supposed to be running away from the fight, not just running into it.
Even bigger than that, against KT's composition, who's really only engaged is either a random hook, which we saw work, don't get me wrong, that can work, but it's just a Gragas Flash. Gragas Flash is your biggest engage tool. It gets blown immediately. Okay, in exchange for 1 Dragon, that means you have 5 minutes of just grouping and doing whatever you want because you know you're not going to get engaged on. You've got the Ashe, you've got the Veigar, you've got the Tahm Kench. You are never going to get engaged on unless you play horrendously. And they should have seen that as an opportunity of safety instead of a situation of panic, which is what they did with the cooldowns. Just wasn't there in understanding how important it is their CC because he could have even run away.
Exactly.
They had the Scuttlecraft.
That could have just been Dragon going over to KT. They ended up trying to use the Veigar E offensively, then they used the arrow, then they used their Rek'Sai tunnel to try and get in. They tried so desperately to engage that, and that just seemed from a frustration perspective because they were like, well, they're here, we might as well fight them.
And this is where I want to return to your earlier point, Crumbs, about KT's composition and its inability to close games effectively, especially given KOO's comp and their ability to kite. We saw even after that Baron was taken and a slight gold lead went in favor of KT, there was a substantial portion of the game in which they were unable to make any progressive moves.
This event horizon from Kuro, I don't know what he's doing at that point. I think he thought Someday was just going to run straight into them. But then Smeb runs to the right side and he's like, oh no, Someday's over here. So these are the skirmished out fights. Even though it's a 5-on-5 when you just look at the entire thing, it's really sections of 2-on-2s and 3-on-3s and 1-on-1s in this fight, which I thought was very well played from KT because they had 2 teleports on the left side, but then the home guard got him on the opposite side. So you had LeBlanc on your left and then you had Darius on your right, and you really had to pay attention to all of these threats at the same time.
I think it's all about identifying what is your win condition, and in this particular case, we had a Darius that was stronger in the split push, a LeBlanc that is stronger in the split push as well. That will allow you to get these wards out, and eventually you'll get that flank that you want. And also, like, to speak to the Veigar point and KOO's play on Veigar, I think it was slightly weak, simply because in the group stages against UG, we saw that KOO, they were banning the Veigar, so you can almost assume that KOO hasn't really practiced Veigar before this week. So he's sure he has been practicing Veigar all week, but I'm not too impressed by it.
I mean, it's kind of like those Yu-Gi-Oh matches. You beat one, you get their card, but then you don't know how to play it at all. They beat CLG, they're trying to play the Veigar. It's just not there. You know, I wasn't convinced by it whatsoever. And even during the laning phase, he fell behind, I think, 30 CS, even after LeBlanc wasted the teleport towards the lane. So really unimpressed with that Veigar play.
All right, well, KT Rolster have taken game 1, and we'll be right back with game 2 to see if KOO Tigers can tie up the series. Don't go anywhere. The action continues in just a few minutes.
KT and KOO, Korean rivals, and it is time, guys. Who's ready for some League of Legends? I think they can. The heal was nearly enough. Someday pulls him in. Oh, and he gets 1-for-1. KOO with an early lead in this fight. Someday and Arrow in a little bit of trouble. Peekaboo already on the way out, and Someday gets knocked up. In fact, Someday got that kill. And now KT comes in. A huge apprehend by Someday, and KT all over the KOO Tigers. There's the ult, and here come the resets flash with the apprehend as well. Nice grab onto Kuro from Peekaboo, and this fight is all KT. Game 1 goes to KT Rolster.